everybody, and welcome to another edition of We Are Mission, a Missio Scotland podcast. I'm delighted to be joined by Father Michael Kelly, who is a Kiltegan father from Ireland, and he is also the National Director of Missio Ireland. So, Father, thanks very much for coming on the podcast
Thank
today.
you very much, Jared.
Okay. So, Father, can you tell us a wee bit about your background growing up in Ireland?
Yeah, I was born in County Tipperary. I grew up on a farm, and we went and walked to the local primary school and back home and even and helped with jobs on the farm and so on. And then I went to a secondary school called Ballyfin in County Laois. And then after leaving secondary school, I stayed about 2 years working in Dublin Airport. And then I was thinking about being a priest, and then I went off to joined Kiltegan Fathers. I suppose while I was young, when I was only 14, my father died suddenly, so that had a profound effect on me, I suppose, in life and so on.
Yeah. And did you come from quite a big family?
I came from a family of 7 children, 5
Right.
boys and 2 girls.
Mm-hmm.
I have a brother, a priest as well.
Right.
But it was difficult for my mother because there were 7 of us when my dad died, and we were all kind of still school age. So,
Yeah.
but thank God, she kept going as best she could and saw us through.
And would you describe it as quite a a traditional Catholic family?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah,
Yeah.
in Ireland at that time.
So, when you were at school and stuff like that, did you ever have any notions of doing anything else other than being a priest? Did you have any other interests?
Yeah, I had, I suppose. I'd love to be the pilot, an airline pilot.
Right.
And when I left school, I did an interview for 2 government jobs. One was for Meteorological Ireland, and the other was for air traffic controller. So
Wow.
the first one came up, and I started and did some training courses, and then shortly while I was started on the job, I got a letter to say I got the other job as well. So I would love to have gone into the air traffic control, but I knew I was short-sighted in one eye, so they mentioned that it would have to have a certain level of light strength. So unfortunately, I didn't move because of that.
Ah, okay. And you were talking about coming from a traditional Catholic family and stuff like that. How big a part did your faith play in your life from an early age?
Yeah, I suppose it's always, we're always a family who went to Mass every Sunday, and I suppose one thing that influenced me very much when my dad died when I was only 14. I often remember I might be going somewhere in the car and he might say, "Did you say your prayers today?" And I remember him a few times saying that every day I say a prayer for the grace of a happy death. And the day he died, he was sick with pleurisy, and the doctor came and said he was going to get him transferred into the local hospital. And my mother said, "Well, we should get the priest down to see you before you go to hospital." And it turned out later that the priest came because they had a wedding on and they were tied up. So they came and he received all the sacraments and was taken into hospital and was dead within an hour. And now that influenced me, I suppose, greatly, the power of prayer and God in our lives,
I mean, in terms of your own vocation, what was the catalyst for it? Was there anyone that was a major influence in that decision?
I suppose I thought about it when I was quite young, and I suppose that idea was always there. And I remember when I was very young, an African magazine, which is a Kiltegan's Father's magazine, used to come into the home, and I remember seeing a photograph of Father Pat Whitney, who was a founder of Kiltegan. And, wasn't only barely able to read at that time, but that little memory stayed there. And I was always thinking about priesthood while I was in the secondary school. But then when I left school, then I suppose I went off with a bit and decided to work for about 2 years. But still, there's a little nagging something in the back of my mind. And so in 1970, I joined Kiltegan Fathers, and I was ordained in 1978.
And you talked about your brother. They're also been a priest. Is he a Kiltegan as well?
No, he's a diocesan priest in my home diocese of Cashel, So he's due to retire this year, so I'm not quite sure what he's going to do.
I mean, in terms of your vocation, what kind of surprises did following your vocation bring, do you think?
Yeah, I suppose I always wanted to somehow work with the poor. And I can remember my own mother when I was very, very young, and some travelling people came to the door looking for help. And not only would she give them something, but I can remember her bringing them into the open fire, sitting them down at the fire to warm themselves and giving them tea and whatever else to eat. and giving them something to go. And looking back on it, I suppose I just felt, he was a very easy way that my mother just had reached out without ever saying anything, but I mean, it had a huge influence on me when I decided to become a missionary priest. Now, she never talked to me about priesthood. My father never talked about it, becoming a priest. But they would still have very positive feelings towards the church and towards priests.
Okay. And I mean, in terms of the actual term vocation, what does it mean to you in a broader sense?
Yeah, I suppose it means dedicating your life to a cause. And, you can say nurses have vocations, doctors have vocations. And for us, I suppose, it's making God's love known to people and God's mercy for them. And that God always forgives us, and He's always with us, and He loves us.
And Ireland has got a kind of very special relationship, I think, with the missions. Why do you think so many Irish priests and religious sisters chose to go on mission?
Yeah, I think back at my generation and who were older than me, I suppose there was a great awareness of the missions in houses and with magazines going in, or maybe a priest coming from the missions giving a talk in the school, and even parents probably talking about it. And we're talking about maybe priests and nuns who went abroad. So there's kind of always in the background there, subtly.
Yeah. In terms of the Kiltegan fathers, why did you choose them in particular? What was appealing about the Kiltegan
Appealing to me. Kiltegan Fathers was founded in 1932 by Father Pat Whitney. In fact, we're 90 years old this year, and we were all celebrating St. Patrick's Day, but there was a lockdown, so we couldn't. And I visited a few places, and I just felt, when I went to Kiltegan, I just felt a very homely atmosphere there, and very conscious of families and the needs of families. I suppose back in my mind was my dad had died when I was 14, as I mentioned, and just sort of openness to families and so on. And I suppose I was very conscious of the fact, well, I'd like to be around when my mother was called to heaven, and I did.
Is there a saint or a scripture passage that kind of defines or inspires your vocation?
Well, I suppose when I was in secondary school, I remember that passage, that which was actually in the Mass yesterday, and that whoever gives their lives to God, and they'll experience 100-fold, but not without persecutions and trials. But that awareness there, and they receive eternal life. I think that as a young fella hit me very much.
And what about saints? Do you have any favourite saints that you pray to?
Yeah, well, I suppose the St. Patrick, Kiltegan were also known as St. Patrick's Missionary, so I suppose St. Patrick would be important there. And also, I suppose, St. Bridget, the Irish saints. And I suppose some of the saints who were, I suppose, very much, John Vianney, and it was to give up to 18 hours, I think, in confession sometimes. And that has influenced me a lot, I would say, in my life, yeah.
And Father Michael, obviously, priests and missionary priests, they've got, it's quite it's tough at times. So where do you kind of draw strength from?
I would say prayer, and it's very important that we pray the breviary every day, and so that would be important for my life, and also some time for meditation, letting God speak to us and listen to God's word in our hearts, and the rosary as well. I must admit, I suppose, as a young priest, sometimes I'm very tired. I might miss saying the rosary. But in 1984, I went to Medjugorje, and so it was very primitive in those days. And since then, I never missed a day without saying the rosary, or maybe a number of rosaries in a day. Might be doing the car when I'm driving at different times, but I would never, even no matter how tired I am, I'd never miss saying the rosary.
And your vocation itself, where is it taking you? Look at the kind of the timeline of your priesthood. Where is it taking you?
Yeah, I was ordained 44 years ago this month, another week, on the 18th of June. And I was sent to Grenada in the West Indies, my first mission, and I was there for just 10 years. But the first 5 years we had 2 revolutions and an American invasion of war, so it's a little bit exciting to say the least. And I suppose, I was only a few months there when the opposition party in government took over from the Prime Minister, a man called Eric Gary. And in fact, his wife was a minister in government, was living in the parish I was in, and used to come to Mass most mornings. So she got up that morning and she was coming to Mass, and she came down to the steps from her house to get the car. There's a young fellow with the radio on saying this is Radio Free Grenada and that the government had been toppled. So she said to the young fellow, "What radio is that?" She said, "Grenada." He said, "Not." He said, "Oh, it is." So she went back, she said, and have a good breakfast before that. But anyway, they came for under house arrest, but they did no harm to her. So then that lasted from 79, March 79 until October 83, when the revolutionaries split among themselves between die-hard and more moderate. And the Deputy Prime Minister and his followers took over from the Prime Minister, and he was locked up. And then all the children in the schools got involved because they were being highly politicised over the 4.5 years. And they took to the streets, including the school I was in myself. And they went and they freed the Prime Minister. And he went from the house he was in, and he went a triumphal march up to an old British Army fort called Fort George, and big 30-40 foot walls all around it. And it was about 2 hours there trying to re-establish control when the other faction drove up with jeeps and lorries full of soldiers, and they just jumped out and sprayed the place with submachine guns, killing about 300 people in the process. Then they captured the Prime Minister and 8 other leaders with him, brought him out the back, lined him up against the wall and shot him. And one of them was Jackie Creft, whom I knew quite well, the Minister for Education, and she was 7 months pregnant. Came out in the trials afterwards. I think she was the first they shot. So then we had 4.5 days shoot to kill curfew from Wednesday night till the following Monday. I mean, that Sunday was Mission Sunday. I remember saying Mass on my kitchen table. And one young teacher who was to stay near me came in for the Mass, and that just the two of us on that Easter Sunday, October 83. Or that Mission Sunday, October 83. And then the curfew was lifted on the Monday, and then at daybreak the following morning, the American Army landed to take over control, and that war went on for us for the best part of a week. And Grenada is very small, it's only 20 miles by 12, so no matter where you are, you're in the middle of it. I could stand in my churchyard and watch the bombers going in and bombing a military base of the revolutionaries down at the end of the parish. I could stand and just watch the bombers diving down and dropping the bombs, and then gone up in the air before the explosion. So we were very much in the middle of it.
I mean, that must have been, it goes without saying, extremely difficult to try and minister to the people there, sort of thing, during that time. I mean, how were you received with the people when you first went, sort of thing?
Oh, the people are very good, yeah. Grenada is very, very welcoming people, and there's a good lively church there, and from the beginning, even when I went there, they had parish council, so they're quite involved in the running of the parish, which was great. And there was another priest with me for the first year, Father Sean McGrath. He's now gone to God rest him, only recently. And he was there for a year, with 2 of us together, and then he was moved off to Brazil to work as a missionary in Brazil. And then I was running the parish on my own, and principal of a secondary school as well. So it was a fairly busy life.
Yeah. So was it just Grenada you were running mission?
I started in Grenada, and I gave 10 years there.
Yeah.
And then after 10 years, I was brought back to become Vocations Director in Scotland and England.
Okay.
And I lived in our house in Bucklivy near Stirling. And that was a house for young men who hadn't finished secondary education. They could come there for do a 2-year course and get their O levels and then go on to the seminary. So a number of them are actually priests here now in Scotland at this time. And I was about 4 years in Scotland. I was moved down to London, lived there, but I continued the same work. And I was involved, I suppose, through that and going to Medjugorje with youth groups. I was involved in the very beginning with Youth 2000 and giving retreats with them and so on. So they were called Youth 2000 about year 89 when young people came back from Medjugorje, and they were anxious to deepen their faith. So being on vocations work, I was kind of free at weekends to be available to them, and that was a great experience as well.
And so did you enjoy living in Scotland for those 4 years?
I did, enjoyed it very much, and sometimes doing mission appeals and driving up to the Highlands and that, so it was wonderful to see the country, yeah.
You still got some good friends here as well?
I have still very good friends here, yeah, hoping to visit some of them now.
Excellent stuff. Just going back to when you were on mission in Grenada, I mean, obviously the war kind of consumed anything, but do you have any like kind of standout memories or stories from your time there?
Yeah, I suppose I have been in the school as principal and teaching, and most of the children were very come from very poor families. Like in the one chap called Martin Purcell, he had a good name, and Martin grew up in a one-roomed wooden flat with his mother, with just a piece of curtain dividing it. It was his grandmother actually. And when I was there, first year I was there, he got very good results in his O levels, which at that time they were doing the English system of examinations. And the government then had decided only to have A levels in a college in the capital, St. George's. So he went down there, but halfway through his course, his granny couldn't pay the bus fare for him to go.
Oh, jeez.
So he came back, and we took him in as a junior teacher. And then he continued to study, got his A levels, and then there was an offshore medical school in Grenada who used to give a few scholarships every year to local people. So Martin got one of those, and now he's a top consultant in the USA.
Wow. And
another lad was another chap we had in the school, and he's a top consultant in cancer research in America now.
And do they both still keep in touch with you?
Occasionally we keep in touch, yeah. But some of them I have, some of my, I suppose, who came from very, very poor, most of them came from very poor families. But to see how they've got jobs, a lot of them stayed on in Grenada, a lot of them immigrated. But some of the ones that were there now I visit when I go back every time, and they are, I think one couple, one chap, he was started off as a teacher, and his wife was in the school, and she was teaching there as well. And I had both of them as students in my day, and he went on then to study law and did correspondence through law and qualified as a barrister. But he's working in Grenada, not as a legal man at the moment. But to see them now that they're making sure all their children go to good schools, and I think their oldest girl now is in university at this time. So it's lovely to see the families developing and growing. So that's great.
Have you managed to get back to visit?
I have,
yeah.
And I was back there. We were celebrating 50 years there as Kiltegan Missionaries at the beginning of COVID. So I was back down there representing the Kiltegan Fathers, and we had a celebration on the Sunday before St. Patrick's Day in one of the churches on St. Patrick's Day in the cathedral. And then the following Sunday we're up in two smaller islands called Carriacou and Petit Martinique, where I also worked. But COVID came in over those days, and on the second weekend I was there, the government decided to close down the airport and just allow one flight in from British Airways on the Wednesday. So I had to cut short my time, and I came back on that flight with British Airways back to London. And I couldn't imagine, I came into Gatwick, and there was only, you could count the people on one hand as around the airport. I couldn't believe it. And then got a connecting flight to Dublin with very few people, and Dublin airport was pretty well deserted when I got there. So it was a whole different experience in a matter of a couple of weeks.
Yeah, have you got any plans to go back at any point?
Well, at this stage, I'd love to go back visit. We're working. I'm in my 70s at this stage, so I did retire a year ago, and anyway, I got called back to be National Director of Missio in Ireland. So I'm still, in that sense, working for missions and being able to help them. So I feel this age of my life I can do something worthwhile.
And that's, you're obviously highly thought of as a missionary, so you will know like what are the most important qualities or characteristics that a missionary must possess. So what do you think those are?
Yeah, I suppose I'd say maybe a love of people. And an acceptance of people where they're at in their lives. And I always believe that God journeys with us in our lives. He's always there. And I was in my hometown, Cashel, about a couple of months ago, and I was coming down the street, and there was an elderly man with a little child holding his hand, and the father moved at the space of the little child. No quicker. He just moved at the pace of the child. And I believe God in our lives is like that. He moves at our pace. Mm-hmm. He waits for us. If we're tired or fall back, he still waits, and he moves on when we're ready.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And you've lived a life and in really trying circumstances. What are the positives and negatives you would say about being a missionary priest?
Well, I suppose it's very rewarding, and it's great. Some of the people I talked about there who made tremendous lives. It was great to have a kind of a hand in helping them on the way. And the challenges are, in Grenada, I lived through those two revolutions and the war in the first 5 years, so it was challenging. And the other thing I would say, I suppose, I went back in 2014 for a visit. 2004 for a visit, and we got hit by a Category 5 hurricane while I was there. So once in a lifetime was enough experience of that. So we had, it was a Category 5 hurricane, so with winds of 150 miles an hour when it hit us, and it lasted from 2 p.m. in the afternoon to about 10 o'clock that night. And the house we're in was ripped apart, the whole roof gone, everything gone. And anyway, the whole place, as the rain was flooded, but we found one or two quiet corners to lie down for. 3 of us in the house to lie down for a few hours. So, but I suppose we can see a bit like the pandemic, that the importance of having God in our lives, and that God is with us, that He's forgiving us and He loves us.
Fantastic. The term mission itself, what does it mean to you personally?
Mission, I'd say, is going out to people, it's spreading the love of God with people. And a God who is merciful to us, who forgives us when we sin, once we ask Him. And I think it's basically about that sharing God's love. And I suppose, as young missionaries, we all also did an awful lot of physical things, of helping to build schools or houses or whatever. In the year 2000, we were hit by tremendous floods in the part of South Africa where I worked. And people, normally I could go 3 miles into the local town. After that, I had to go 50 miles each way to get to another town to get basic food. And it's the same for everybody. And so we got some grants from American, like SCIF in America. So they gave us quite a bit of funds, and we rebuilt over 100 houses for people. Mm-hmm. And just a lot of money, maybe just one room, but they added on then later on, yes. Yeah, in Grenada, South Africa, then where I worked for about 14 years, and again, totally different scene. And the parish I was in, a place called Bungani near Nelspruit, which is on the edge of the Kruger Park. But we took, I suppose, it's only 100 miles from one end to the other. So we had 14 different church communities there. And a lot of our work there would be training lay people in ministry and young people. And I was back there about 3 years ago, and I stayed in the parish with, there was an African priest there from Congo, Father Floribert. So I stayed with him, and it was great. He was parish council meeting the Saturday I was there with him, and it was great to see a lot of the people in the parish council were young people that were there on my time, and just to see them coming back, very involved in the church. It was very satisfied to see that.
And that follows on quite well, because you've obviously seen it at first hand in South Africa and stuff like that, about how lay people can be missionaries. So what is the best way that a lay person can live out their mission, do you think? Yeah,
I think, I suppose here to get involved in things at home, like Missio here in Scotland, and any group, and if someone want to go out to the missions, then I'd say contact some of the missionary groups, because I think it's important to go out through some group, because then you'll have a backup service. And, there'll be someone there to call on if things are difficult or whatever, So, but again, that spirit, I suppose, of sharing, not being focused on ourselves, but focused on other people and to journey with them in their lives.
Yeah. And in terms of the Kiltegans, what's the current situation for the Kiltegans?
Current situation, we're 90 years this year, founded in St. Patrick's Day 1932 by Father Pat Whitney. And he went out as a young priest to Nigeria, just as a diocesan priest, from Manu to a few others. And while he was there, he felt if more priests didn't go out to continue the work that they were involved in, that effort would fall flat. So he came back, and anyway, in 1930 got permission from Rome to start our missionary group. So a bit like diocesan priests who come together to do missionary work. So we started basically through he going to Nigeria, and just 2 or 3 weeks ago, with a chapter of our society went on for the first 3 weeks there of May, And our delegates there have elected our new Superior General, and he's a young priest from Nigeria. And so we've gone the full circle, and he has 3 councillors who are with him. One, this Vicar General, is a man from County Cork, and then the other 2 one is from the Turkana Desert in Kenya, and another Raphael is from Zambia. And these, in fact, the latter 2 I had in training and formation myself in South Africa. So we've gone the full circle. We now basically hand over the whole leadership to young African priests. So it's a full circle of missionary work.
Fantastic. And so you became National Director, was it November 2021?
Yeah.
So how have you found that?
Well, it's when just coming in, I suppose, as the COVID is beginning to ease off a bit, and there were still some lockdowns after I came in. And but I'm just getting the whole hang of it, but I think it's so wonderful. And when I was in South Africa, the parish I was in, we were feeding about 1,000 young people orphaned through AIDS. And a couple of 3 years, we got some funding from the Missio, and I didn't quite understand how it worked at the time that we'd apply through the Missio office to the bishop, and then the nuncio onto the bishop, the Missio office in Rome. But eventually, when we got funding, it came from Malta, and I didn't quite understand why is Malta sending us money, but now I understand how it works. And that help is tremendous. So in the Missio, there's the POF, which is available, where so much money is allocated to missionary diocese. I have my own classmate, John Ryan, he's a bishop in a place called Mazuzu in Malawi. So he gets, I think he told me, 30,000 a year to help in the running of the diocese, where people are very poor. And then there's a second section where for help seminaries for training priests, where nuns are being trained, where catechists are being trained to put on the faith. So that's another leg of the program. And then there's a third leg, which is for missionary children under 14 years. So the idea is children helping children. Here at home in Scotland, if get school children to help the children out there. And as I say, in that parish, Bungani, where I gave 7 years, we were feeding 1,000 AIDS orphans. And it was so interesting to see the kind of things there. I can remember we had one grandmother, Gogo is a great Zulu word for a granny, and she had buried 4 daughters in 1 year through AIDS, and then she had taken in, I think, 15 children and was looking after them. So there were some of the children coming to and there wasn't some other Christian group, they weren't Catholic, but we fed any hungry children. And then a year or so later, that poor woman got cancer and died. So those children were again scattered among relatives all over. So, and again, another day I was there with the feeding of the children, and there was one very little girl, very sickly, and they just line them up in the row to come in, but they sat with the smallest back up to the older ones. And this little girl took in this very small child into the little room, kitchen where they were getting the food. And the 2 of them came out, and the older girl sat down with her back to the wall of the kitchen, and to put down the 2 dishes of food. But before she took any mouthful of food herself, she fed the weaker child. And she was one of the children of that granny who had taken in 15 children. And yet she was thinking of someone else, someone that was weaker than herself. And I just thought, if I had a video camera, it would have been wonderful just to capture it, Yeah. So and she was children helping children. She was helping the weaker, even though she came from very impoverished setup herself.
I mean, in that respect, then, why do you think it's important for people to support the work of the Pontifical Mission Societies?
Yeah, I mean, it's the Pope's charity for missionary work, and having worked in the missions, I mean, I was away from Ireland for over 30 years, and I just become aware of that His Holy Father's charity, and that the money is going to people who are very much in need, and to train the next lot of younger priests and nuns coming up, and that'll be help our local countries here, because you'll see more and more priests coming from Africa to parishes here. So not only are we helping them, but we're going to benefit from it later on.
Yeah, absolutely. Just in terms of the church in Ireland, How does it differ from some of the countries in which you've served, and how do you feel about the state of the church in Ireland at the minute?
Yeah, I suppose the big thing in the missions is the whole vibrancy in the church, and full of young people, and and the singing is just fabulous, And my last Holy Saturday night in Bungani Parish, I had 69 baptisms, adults, and I think once over 16, we also confirmed it was just 30 something, and the morning after we had 10 of them got married. We're already married in the local tradition, but one of them might be a woman in one case, a man in another case, so they wanted all their marriages blessed in the church. So, but the vibrancy of the singing and the Holy Saturday night is just unbelievable. Here in Ireland, you come back and you'll be lucky, I suppose, to get singing sometimes. And but that can change. Last parish I worked in Ireland, with just one girl who was good, and she could play the organ, and she started, and she got formed a little choir with her. And even here we had a wonderful Holy Saturday night, because she knew all the different hymns and different psalms and everything to sing. So it can be done here as well. But I think there's a lot of work to be done here. And I think you need more involvement of lay people, like parish councils, and try and get some young people into those as well. And interesting, I was talking to one young man who comes into Missio office in Dublin, where I am. He's part of a group that comes in there doing Catholic comment, and he studies in Trinity College, but he goes to Mass every day, and he told me in University College, Dublin, he told me about 50 young people go to Mass every day. So there's a lot of good shoots there, and to be tuned into those.
I mean, and obviously the church in Ireland in the recent past hasn't been without its problems. How do you see things going forward in the future?
I think our church is going to be much more humble, and they're more open to people, and that when there's mistakes are made, that it'll be admitted, and to be aware of God's mercy and love there for all people involved. I think that's important.
Fantastic. Father, we'll end on a kind of light-hearted note, just as we always do with every guest. Tell us something about yourself that other people maybe don't know.
Yeah.
Do you have a hidden skill, or?
Well, I suppose we all have. Yeah, I would be a missionary at heart, I suppose, and that's why when I started to take on this job in Missio, I suppose that's why I took it on, I did maybe something that most people wouldn't know. I came back to Ireland in 2009. I was going back to the missions, and I was having a medical checkup, and I discovered I had cancer. So I had to have major surgery for cancer, and so since then I've been back working in Ireland. But what I say to people maybe who have sickness or suffering or cancer in their lives, it's not the end. I'm still over the ground 13 years later. So I'd still doing the best I can.
Well, Father Michael, we hope you're around for a good number of years yet. And thank you very much for coming on the podcast and speaking to us and talking about your time in mission. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jared. Thank you very much.
Missio Scotland is a Scottish branch of the Pontifical Mission Societies, the Pope's official charity for overseas mission. To learn more about the work of Missio Scotland, you can visit our website www.missioscotland.com. You can like us on Facebook, www.facebook.com/Missio Scotland. You can also follow us on Twitter, Missio_Scotland, and on Instagram, Missio Scotland. If you would like to donate to Missio Scotland, visit www.missioscotland.com/donate. You can also call us on 01236 449 774 or send donations to Missio Scotland, 4 Laird Street, Coatbridge, ML5 3LJ. Please keep us in your prayers. Thank you and God bless.